My name is Lydia from Zambia in Kabwe. Yes, I am a community advocate. I am a mother and a potential class member to the class action that is currently there against Anglo American. My two young children are also potential class members to this case against Anglo American, which is a class action. And many members of my communities where I come from, they are all potential members to the class action. My family and I, like many other families in the community where I come from, are living in a polluted environment. We are living in a polluted environment that is affected by lead poisoning. And we live in fear. Most of the days, or almost every day of our lives, we're in fear of our health. We're in fear even of the food that we eat. We are in fear of the air that we breathe, because we don't know what is going on in our bodies. And then raising children in this environment has proved to be very difficult for mothers like me. Even would-be mothers are also in fear because they're scared of what could happen to the health of their children having to grow up in this contaminated environment. The lead poisoning in Kabwe affects mostly young children because these are vulnerable, as they are most of the times playing in the soil that is contaminated by lead, and they're at high risk of getting infected or contaminated by this poison. And much of our soil is also contaminated in the sense that we cannot grow vegetables in a simple backyard. The water also we also suspect that the water that we use even just to water our vegetables can be contaminated, because like most of you may be aware, where I come from, not every home has access to piped water. So people would resort to digging some wells, maybe at their backyards, and it's very much possible that from where the wells are dug, the soil there is also contaminated, thereby contaminating the water that people use to water their vegetables, contaminating the water that they consume in their homes. And this has been very scary, very difficult for us. Even just watching our children growing up in this environment, we observe that most of them suffer from memory loss, and we suspect that it's because of the lead. They are not able to retain much of the things that they are told, even just simple instructions like to go and fetch something in the home. They'll go into the house, come back and ask you again to say, what did you ask me to get? It is so heartbreaking for mothers like me and many other mothers back home to see our children experiencing this, to an extent that even when they go to school, their learning outcomes and desirable performances average to below average in most of these lead hotspot areas. And it's disheartening, and we know why this is the cause, or why this is the situation in our area. It's because of the mining activities that were started in the 1920s, which Anglo have a part in it. They did the mining activities, they profited from the mines, but at the moment the mine is closed, but we're still living with the effects of the contamination that was started by Anglo American. And we feel neglected, we feel vulnerable, we feel like nobody cares about how our environment is, how we are living. And so to help ourselves, we embarked on this class action where we're hoping that we can get compensation for the health effects, possible health effects that our children, that women of childbearing age and would-be mothers would face. We are also seeking compensation in the sense that we would like our environment to be cleaned, to get rid of the lead poison that is in our environment, so that our environment can be safe for us now, even for our children's children and generations to come. So we believe as a community that it's only possible if we act now can we save even the future generations so that they can come to live in a healthy environment and enjoy good health. So we would like a situation where we could be assisted to get the message out there, to compel Anglo to do the right thing and clean up the environment and compensate those whose health has been affected by the lead poison in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. So we have now Richard Meeran from Leigh.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just spend a few minutes telling you about the legal action that is taking place in South Africa. First of all, this is a terrible case of double standards. The blood lead levels in children living close to the Kabwe mine are more than 10 times higher on average than the standards that are in place in Europe and the US. The levels are astronomical. This has been going on for decades. Would never be tolerated over here, but apparently it's okay because it's Zambian kids. The mine was an Anglo American mine for about 50 years, from 1925 to 1974. No investigations were carried out by Anglo into the health of local communities until one of their doctors, towards the end of the period, 1969, Dr. Lawrence, who contacted us when the case began, he arrived on the mine as a young doctor. He could immediately see there was a problem with the local children, and so he carried out blood lead tests on 500 of them and found huge levels of lead in their blood. He was so worried, he got the results on a Saturday, he went straight to the chief medical officer to tell them what he'd found. And as a result of that, experts were called from the UK, very eminent occupational environmental health experts. They confirmed the findings, and they recommended that there should be a big cleanup of the local area. Topsoil should be replaced, communities should be moved. But the company decided that this was too costly, and so they didn't do it. They then transferred the mine to a Zambian state-owned company in 1974, which carried on operating until 1994. Now, Anglo doctors had confirmed in the 70s that there was this serious problem. They just handed over the mine, and now the company is saying, now Anglo American is saying, oh, they're not responsible. It's all the responsibility of the company that they took over from in 1925 and the company that they handed over to in 1974. Nothing to do with them. Well, then how do you explain the findings in the 1970s? Anyhow, we started working with South African lawyers. The South African attorneys are the lawyers for the claimants, and the case is brought in South Africa because the head office company of Anglo American at that time was Anglo American South Africa. That was the parent company of the group. And so a case was filed in South Africa in October 2020, an application for a class action. And according to experts, this class comprises around 140,000 people who've been affected currently. That's not including all the people who were affected in previous generations. That's just today. Now, the case is being brought in South Africa because that is a place where it is possible for these claimants to obtain access to justice. In Zambia, it would be impossible because the claimants can't afford to pay for lawyers. There's no legal aid in Zambia to pay for the case. Lawyers are not allowed to act on a contingency fee basis, on a no-win, no-fee basis in Zambia, and they don't have class actions in Zambia. Now, all these things are possible in South Africa, and in addition to that, funding has been obtained from a funder to pay for the costs and so on. It will enable, if it's allowed to occur, the case to be fought on something like equality of arms. Not quite, because you're dealing with a very powerful multinational corporation with an army of lawyers and experts. So it will never be proper equality of arms, but at least it will be possible if the class action is allowed to go ahead for the claimants to obtain access to justice there. So the class action was filed in October 2020. In December 2023, the court decided that the class action application should be refused. And in March last year, the court gave permission to appeal that decision. So in March 2024, was it April? Maybe April 2024, the court gave permission to appeal, and we are likely to get an appeal hearing towards the end of the year, so probably November or so. So it's a long time, and you know there is a problem here of justice delayed being justice denied. What I just want to mention as well now is that you will know from your interactions and your knowledge of Anglo American that this is a company that is very outspoken when it comes to its public statements on corporate social responsibility, all the policies it has and so on. And it has a group human rights policy in which it says where we would contribute, where our activities have contributed to harm, we will contribute to the remediation of that harm. So quite understandably, the claimants are asking, well, you know, you obviously contributed to this. Where is your commitment to the policies that you say you subscribe to? This has resulted in a number of organisations supporting the case, in addition to Action for Southern Africa and London Mining Network. Amicus briefs have been filed by several UN agencies, special rapporteurs and UN working groups have filed submissions in the case. Amnesty International has filed submissions, the Centre for Child Law and Oxford University Human Rights Hub as well. They've all filed briefs, and what they're essentially saying is that Anglo's opposition to the class action, which is the only way in which the claimants can obtain access to justice, their opposition to it, if it was successful, would result in no access to justice at all. And that is entirely contrary to the human rights policies of Anglo American, in which they say they are committed to access to justice. So there's a contradiction, an inconsistency there, which these organisations are drawing attention to, and Anglo need to explain what their human rights policy is for. You know, if they want to defend the case on the merits, defend the case on the merits. If they think they've got a defence, defend it. But don't stop the claimants trying to get access to justice. So I think that's just, happy to answer any questions afterwards, but that's just a summary of the legal action.
Thank you so much. I just have a question. People can hear well, or should we use microphone? You're hearing? I didn't get the answer. Sorry. What's the answer?
Yeah, fine.
You're fine. Okay. Good. So we have now some times for questions for this particular case. So if there's any questions, David?
Thank you both for really important presentations. The question really in my mind is about the ability of the legal system to deliver justice. We can see from Gaza at the moment that international humanitarian law is crumbling, and we know that the corporate social responsibility promises made by large corporations are virtually worthless other than as a mask or camouflage. does the law still provide traction to get results in your view, or do we need another combination of forces or leverage?
Well, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think it could. I still have faith in the ability of the court system to deliver justice in this case, although it is taking far too long. Really crucial, though, in ensuring that happens is the support from civil society. You know, that really is important. It raises the profile of the case. I heard at the Anglo AGM yesterday, they were on their usual mantra of attacking the lawyers. You know, having civil society involved elevates a case above that. It highlights the real importance of it, and courts will take notice as well if there is a campaign and media coverage. That's the kind of thing that does grab attention, and of course it is what has led to these other organisations, UN and Amnesty International in particular, intervening in the case. You know, this is all really important, and I think the law has been developed. And we're talking about English law here, but English law is going to apply to this case for reasons which I won't bore you with at the moment. But English law has developed quite substantially over the last 25 years when it comes to the liability of multinational parent companies. So that's all positive. So yes, I think, you know, we will. I believe we will get there in the end. But unfortunately for the community, it's taken far too long.
So there's two more questions. We're gonna say the questions first, and then we're gonna have the response. So, yeah, okay. Here's one.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who the answer. So what was the mining? That was not clear.
Lead and zinc.
And for what was it for? That they were extracting that in particular?
Extracting lead.
Yeah.
Oh, lead is used in for lots of things in manufacturing and chemical processes and all kinds of things, and zinc as well. But it was a massive mine. It was the world's biggest lead mine at the time, and the tailings dumps that were left behind are huge, and they're still there.
So there's a question here.
Also, I'd just like to ask is, I've been to ESG investment conferences, and one of the arguments that they put forward there is that there could be a regulatory signal to financial markets which would change the way in which corporations operate. With your understanding of the Kabwe situation, would you say that is a valid argument?
Well, I think I mentioned the group human rights policy of Anglo American, in which it makes commitments which mirror the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Now, that has provided a route for these organisations to intervene in the case, because they draw attention to the contradiction between what Anglo American is saying publicly and what it's actually doing. And that is also relevant to the legal case, because public statements that a company makes can give rise to a duty of care on the part of that company, a legal duty of care, to act in accordance with its public statements. So these things do kind of dovetail together potentially.
So there's 3 more questions in the room, and I think that's what we can. So yourself, and I saw someone there. Okay, so 2 questions. Yeah.
So for Richard, if you have ever tried, not you personally, but the group, any other legal strategy to challenge either the environmental damage or the health of the people, or only this class action?
For this particular community?
Yes.
No, this is really the only option. It isn't possible to
And the
bring.
Constitution of South Africa.
The South African constitutional principles do come into play in the legal action, in the procedure, because the class action mechanism in South Africa is something which arises from the South African constitution. So South African constitution is relevant there. So it's part of the legal action in that sense. But it's not possible to bring a case in Zambia for the reasons that I explained.
Two quick questions. First one's naive. Has Anglo American ever been held accountable? And the second one is, you named some organizations, and we're very happy to hear that they're working with you in some way on this. Are there other organizations that you hope will join in this laborious process of bringing them to the table?
Well, first of all, on Anglo American, we did manage to hold them accountable on behalf of South African gold miners who had contracted silicosis. That was also a case that was litigated in South Africa. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of organisations that have expressed support, and obviously the more that do, the better. There's also RAID, for instance, who've played an active role in this. But yeah, I mean, the more attention this gets, the better, because it's an absolutely tragic situation for this community.
Can I just add that, so if people are interested, then there is a group that's forming that's kind of going to be pursuing all of the things around Anglo's cases, the Arts and Society Alliance or Coalition. We're hoping to get a House of Lords debate this year around Anglo, which will really piss them off. So anybody wanting to get involved in that, just let us know and we'll keep you in the picture.
So we have a last question because we have still time. Go for it.
Have you managed to engage with investors, institutional investors, on this issue, and if so, what has their response been?
I think that's probably best put to Tricia, because you've had more
with
interaction.
the London Money Network and RAID, we write to investors pretty much about once a quarter. We haven't got much investment engagement yet. I don't know, Diana, you were hoping to see some this trip, this time around? Yeah, it's very, very difficult. At the AGM yesterday, the Church of England Pension Fund was there, and so they're in my sights. They were in my sights a couple of years ago, and then just, the energy to, but yeah, they're back in my sights. So we'll be trying to pursue a big one like that, and then see where we can go. So we'll just pick on one. I think we were sort of spreading ourselves too thinly. So the idea would be to try and pick on them with the moral argument. So yeah, thanks.